This is the Fly Culture Podcast with me, your host, Pete Tyjas. Welcome everyone to the very, very latest Fly Culture Podcast. This one's going to take a little bit of a different turn. Instead of an interview as such, I'm sitting down with my friend Nick Hart, and we're going to talk about, as it's coming into the Christmas period, the tackle that we use and have enjoyed using this year, and just have a little bit of a review of it. The interesting thing we've done with this, that instead of actually telling each other what we're going to review, we're just going to sort of talk about it and see if we have an idea and a view about things, and hopefully that you're going to find this, like I say, a little bit more interesting, a little bit different to what I've done before. So first off, I'd like to introduce my friend Nick Hart on today. I'm sure many of you know exactly who he is, but just for those few that probably don't, welcome Nick, and perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Morning, Pete. Thanks for having me along. Great to be here. A little bit about myself. Well, really simply, been a fishing guide for a very long time, and then a couple of years ago now, swapped the waders for me trousers, my chinos, and I do some work now with Four Farlows. So I work there and a little bit of guiding on the side as well. So basically, I wouldn't call myself, thinking about one of your podcasts with Luke Bannister, I wouldn't call myself either a trout bum, but I'm certainly a pretty obsessive fisherman, and I've kind of found a way, by hook or by crook, to kind of work in business for a few years now.
Fantastic. And what we thought we'd do with this is just suggest a few things that we've enjoyed using and talk a little bit about them. And I thought we'd probably kick off, and it's interesting, I can see a rod tube down there, so I think we're going to start off on a similar sort of line, but we're going to start off with a rod, and my first choice is one from Sage, and it's from their new light line range, and it's a reintroduction really of a much loved and venerated range of rods from some, I was thinking about it the other day, some 30 years ago now.
Wow.
And I'm showing my age now because I know I had one of the original ones as well when they came out, a 9-foot full weight version of it. And I know those second-hand rods were, even up until very recently, and probably still, were trading at really good prices. People were keen to track down, and the one that seemed to be the most coveted was the 893. If you're not a rod geek like myself and yourself, Nick, that was the 8'9" 3-weight rod, and it was a range of rods that were brought out, as the name suggests, light line, that they were brought out for predominantly river fishing. And I've been very lucky enough to get an 8'9" 3-weight of the new one, and it keeps a lot of the original feel and sense of the light line range. I don't know if you know the light lines from originally. You're probably a tiny bit, or have you fished
no,
those tiny bit?
It's going to be really interesting to listen to what you have to say about it, because it's a rod that we've had come into the store that I have picked up, and I've definitely wiggled and felt that feels really very nice indeed. Interesting length, etc. But it isn't a rod. I've cast a lot of Sage rods over the years. I've got my real favourites. That's one that wasn't on my radar, and I hope it is soon.
Yeah, it's. I think the first thing to say about it, talk about the action of it really, and it's not. You may associate Sage. I don't think so recently or latterly that they're super stiff rods that they're actually making.
No.
And this one is a real more of a medium action rod. Bends from the tip down. Great for making those shorter casts. I've wound it up as well, and it makes some longer casts as well, obviously. But for playing fish as well, it's been a real pleasure to use. I've been gearing that with a line. I think the lines are always really important to choose the right line with it. And whenever
what are you putting on there?
I've got line? I've tried a couple. My default line really is the gold. The Rio Gold. Yeah. I think I've said it on previous podcasts that I always believe that if you're going to buy a rod, one of the first places I will look is to see if that rod manufacturer, whoever it is, makes their own fly line. Because I believe possibly naively, but I don't think so, that people, when they are testing prototypes, they will use their own fly lines on them, because it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, to use one of your own. You can sell the fly line to go with the rod as well. So Farbank, who owns Sage, Rio and Reddington, to me it always makes sense to string a Rio line to start at that place. It doesn't mean that you won't find another sweet fly line that goes with it, but that tends to be my default place to start with. So I tried the new technical trout line on there as well from Rio, and the gold, and they both throw really, really nicely. From a fishing point of view, it bends a little bit more deeply, but it's not a noodle at all. And doesn't bend super deep. I would say, as I said previously, really middle action, medium action, but super fast recovery. It's got the kinetic HD in it that all of the modern Sage rods have. So looking at the blank, you can see it's super thin, yet very, very strong as well. So light in the hand, very, very easy to use. And my background really is river fishing, and it fits to fish the smaller medium rivers really, 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 really well. So I've really enjoyed using that. The back end of the year, I know they're relatively new to the market, but I've really enjoyed using that, and it's made me smile a little bit that your first choice as well comes from the same stable as well.
Yeah, it does. No, I mean that light line, just to quickly touch on that, by the way. Yeah, I wheeled it and I've thought that feels really nice. But I think something that you've said there, touched on, that's so important for people that are perhaps thinking about buying new rods and so on, is you've got to string them up. Wiggling them around in shops and so forth is one way. And of course, if you've got experienced people in there that are using those rods with certain lines, they can help recommend it. Couldn't agree more. You also, if you've got a company like Sage that are obviously in there with Rio and so on, it makes a lot of sense. Thinking about, again, I was listening to Luke Bannister on the way over here, the podcast that you did with him, and I always remember having a client that had one of his rods and it cast appallingly. It was absolutely terrible. It wasn't the rod, and I pulled out of my bag a line that I thought would be much better with it, because the guy was struggling, put it on and it totally came alive. And I think that's the thing. You can Sage make very high-end rods, but you've got to have the right line on there.
Yeah. Which
brings me on to, I look forward to using that light line, but it brings me on to my favourite rod at the moment, the Dart.
Yeah.
Now, I have to admit that when this first came out, I didn't think, I wonder what that's like. It was a little bit like buying a car because of the colour. It was called the Dart, and you know what I'm going to say. Yeah. We've got a Dart up the road. And I have to say, it had been this thing in my head, I'm going to christen my Dart on the Dart, and with one thing and another this year, it didn't happen. But I'm very, very pleased that I got my hands on one, because it's a lot more than just a name. The one that I've got here is that there's various versions of this. They start in at the short sort of 6.5 foot versions. I went for the 7.5 foot. And although I've got lots of kind of 4-weight rods, I love 9 foot forwards. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go short and I'm going to go light line. So the one that I've got is the Dart for a 2-weight. It's just a total dream. It's, you were talking feel. The thing is with this rod of Sage, I think that it feels to me pretty quick, but with a lot of feel. And what it's absolutely perfect for, my kind of way of using this is I love it on the small streams for just flipping dries and nymphs and stuff like that in under trees. But because there is a little bit of power there, it's great in the wind. It's just, for me, as a small stream rod, I think I've fallen in love, really. You know, I like the slightly quicker action. The blank, super, super thin. I really like this handle. They haven't actually gone down the cigar route. We got that sort of reverse half Wells job there. It just works.
And I know a lot of people get excitable about cork, and rightly so. And if you're buying a premium end rod, and let's be honest about this is a premium end rods, both of these that we're talking about actually, and it may not be for everyone, these sorts of rods. I know my life and your life revolves around fishing.
Yep.
And you come to find out about these things, don't you? And spending time in the company of these sort of rods, and you get to understand it. And I think they seem to me to be making the best rods they've been making in quite some time.
Yes.
I don't know if that is the resin and the manufacture, but even the cork, I know that they spend a lot of time sourcing the best quality cork that they possibly can, the way that it's finished, the weight and the ease to fish with is very pleasing. And the dart, to me, funnily enough, when I was thinking about the light line is almost the bigger brother of the dart. They're similar, but for slightly different applications. And as you said, that the 7.5 and 6 foot rods are really for the real small stream stuff and getting short cast in under trees and in nasty places. The light line fits that gap a little bit further. Just
it'd be a better nymphing rod for a start if you were doing some of the, if you wanted to swap it over for that. And I think as a dry fly rod on some of the bigger rivers as well.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've not had your experience of actually going out casting and fishing with it yet, but it definitely, to me, is one that will be, well, we're heading towards Christmas, and it'll be high on my list.
Yeah, no, they're a very, very sweet rod. I've been super pleased.
Something interesting as well, you touched on there. Do you know what? I think a lot of these higher end rod companies are having to more and more up their game, because the simple fact is as well is you can buy some very good kind of lower price rods these days, and so they're more and more, I guess, with technologies that they're having them, they're being pushed harder, and no doubt. I mean, it's great to see the likes of the light line as a rebirth, and wouldn't it be nice if they did it with things like the SLT and that as well? Would be great. SPs, etc. But equally awesome to see something brand new on the table like the dart. You mentioned about high-end rods. There's something, you do see that. What's the point? Why pay all of that money? It's just a fishing rod at the end of the day. To that, it's always, well, of course, there's no obligation to spend several £100 on a fly rod. You can get some quite good stuff for not huge money. But it comes down to, at the end of the day, when you put the rods against each other, there's no doubt, in my mind, that the more expensive rods have more of that feel. There's no doubt that they are much more beautifully constructed. And I look at it like this: I will, unless something pretty drastic happens, never own a supercar. And you know how much I love my cars. But actually, one of these things, it's possible. It's within people's reach. You could save up for a Sage. And the other thing is that I think, the backup with them is great as well. If something happens to it, they'll get it fixed.
That's a really valid point, and touching on the cars as well, is that it is like cars, really, isn't it? There are prices. Anglers are well served throughout.
Definitely.
That it may be that you look at one sort of car and, like you mentioned, a supercar and stuff like that, and rods are very, very similar in that sense as well. And I think one of the things I always think about with these rods as well, and I touched on at the very beginning, was that the light line, the original ones, are still trading close to, a Sage XP. They're 250, 290 quid. So when you buy it, yes, it's going to depreciate a little bit, but there's still a good secondary market. So definitely, if there is a rod that comes through further down the line that you really like, you've got something that's worth something that you've enjoyed, that somebody might still want to buy in a secondary thing as well. So I think that's worth mentioning as well. I've got very happy memories of my first outing with the Sage Dart. It was the very first video review we did for Fly Culture, and we were going to head further up the river, but it was summertime. You can see the video. It's on our website if you search through, but you'll find it on there. And it was summertime. It was September. It was September, and the rivers on the upper tour where it was more appropriate to fish that rod were too low, and we didn't feel it was fair to fish for fish in those conditions. So we went further down the river where you and I fished before, and we set up, and there wasn't much happening at the time. And I said to Tom, who was very kindly videoing it at the time, I said, look, there's a shot here. I'm going to throw something heavy, though. So I was fishing the 3-weight version of it, and I was chucking a duo, actually, but I think it was about 3 mil of tungsten on, which I could, it wasn't the easiest, but it was chucking it out.
Yep.
And I hooked a sea trout. It was a really coloured sea trout. It wasn't it had been in the system a while, good 2 and a bit pound. Rod didn't struggle at all with it. It was absolutely fantastic.
It has got power in it. I've had a few okay fish on it. I've not had anything as big as that yet, but it's definitely got some guts in it. What I would say, we chatted about the light line, what lines you like on it. For me, the go-to line on this is the Rio Creek.
Yeah,
it is the one. I was just gobsmacked about it. That's why I decided, when you said, Nick, bring some tackle that you really like this year, that's why I kind of gone for this. And I have actually got with me as well, I've got a little T-ball reel that I really absolutely love, and I wanted to do something special with it, and so I put that on my dart, and it's this one. I don't know if have you ever seen the little T-ball Spring Creeks?
No.
Oh, this thing's... Sorry, I must remember to be nearer the microphone, diving around. So yeah, there, look, have a little look at that.
Lovely.
Isn't that a pretty little reel?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about T-ball. I don't know so much about them. I think of them more as a saltwater reel.
Yeah.
And that's a really pretty reel.
It's pretty, isn't it?
And so they're built in the States, are they? Or?
I believe they're made in the States, yeah. I must admit, I don't know as much about them as I would sort of like Able. It was just that reel was kind of in our case at the shop, and it was just one of those things that I looked at and thought, wow, I really like that. It's just a quality looking little bit of kit, and for me, yeah, it was a case of I've got to have that and put a line on it and go out and use
really
it.
Pretty.
And I kind of carry it. It's one of those bits of kit that I'm much more careful with. So I carry it around. You can see this is pretty much spotless.
Yes.
And I cover it in that all the time wherever I go. I really kind of look after it. But yeah, of course, what T-ball would really be known for is their stuff for the salt water, the Pacifics and the Gulf Streams, the Everglades, all of those reels that people use to go out and catch some of those serious saltwater species. But yeah, that little thing there, that Spring Creek's beautiful.
You can feel it just pulling
it's like
the
a
line
little
off.
watch,
it's like
isn't
a watchmaker.
Yeah.
It's exactly
yeah.
what I was going to... how much do these cost, Nick?
Oh, something like that's about 350.
Right.
Yeah, round about there. It's so it's an expensive reel, but again, I kind of I think the great thing about fishing right across the board is that you can go about it however you like. You don't have to spend huge amounts of money. And equally, there's that kind of pride of ownership, kind of, it's really nice to be stood on the river with something that you enjoy using,
Yeah.
I don't think many anglers could look at that little reel and not think, wow, that's beautiful.
That is
They might bulk a little bit when you say, yeah, that's 350 notes. But I guess I've always tried to sort of think about things a little bit too, like, you can go to a pub and easily spend 60 quid on a night out having a few beers and something to eat, especially if you've got to buy a round, and definitely if you're in London, and lots of other things that we do, buying cups of coffee here and there. If you really, really want something like that, I guess it's possible to, put a bit of cash away and get it. And then the great thing is, I know that T-ball, I'm just turned 45, and, that's the kind of thing I should be able to pass on to my lad. That's going to keep going well beyond my years, and we see that with a lot of the old Hardy reels and stuff that come in. It's amazing how very well made kit like that you spent a bit of money on lasts and lasts.
Yeah. No,
and fishing's enjoyment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, I think, because we're so deeply entrenched in it, that's probably where we're going to circle, because we're holding rods a lot of the time. That's probably where we do tend to gravitate towards that that part of the world, I guess. But
And they make specific rods as well. A lot of these companies now are making aren't they?
Yes.
And so if you're doing very specific types of fishing, whether that's chucking little tiny dryers on a very small creek, right through to Euro nymphing, through to whatever, these rods all have kind of jobs to do. And I know, especially when I chat to some beginners about it, finding a rod that does absolutely everything. There's always some that maybe just about to do this and maybe just about to do that, but then there'll be something that it does really well. And these companies like Sage, I think, are filling that gap nicely.
Yeah. No, absolutely, I would agree. Let's move to a different price point then. I've been, from a fishing point of view, I've still got the reel here, and if you forget it, that's too bad. But I've been fishing. I go through these spells where I think, well, I want a vest. I've got to carry everything. Then I decide I don't want to carry everything. I want to travel light. So I fish with a lanyard. And I've over the years, even when I first started working for you, when I was guiding with an old C&F lanyard. One of those old little plastic boxes that you've got free from Orvis with some flies in it and some tippet and some forceps and stuff like that, and stuffed a net down the back of my wading belt, and I lost a number of nets doing that, so I don't recommend that as an idea, but it worked really, really well for me. The downside of that is that when you're fishing, even when you're guiding, that drink of water, really important, suntan lotions, silly things like that, but most importantly as well, a rain jacket. And if I'm fishing on my own, a sandwich and stuff like that. Now, I've got problems with that if I'm fishing with a lanyard. That was really not a pain, but you had to think about things a little bit more if I was going for a day's fishing and stuff like that. So I gravitated away, and I wanted to find something. A lot of the issues I had with fishing vests were that having short legs and sometimes wading deeper, that the line when it was on the water before I made a cast would get caught on stuff.
Right.
And sometimes the positioning of pockets for fly boxes meant that they were at the lowest part of the fishing vest.
Yeah.
So I would have to come home, if I had waded a little bit deep, then I would have to go put the fly boxes to go and dry out.
Been there?
Yeah. So, and
blotting
you've got long
paper,
legs.
all of that.
Yeah. And you've got long legs.
Yeah.
So that was a problem for me. So I've been looking for a little while to try and find something that would fill that void for me, that was light. I didn't have to carry 10 fly boxes and stuff like that, yet I'd room to put a water bladder should I need one, and a jacket and perhaps a sandwich and stuff like that. And like I say, I've been looking for quite a long time, but I found the Patagonia hybrid pack vest, which I've got here.
Nice.
Which is small, yet I can put 2 large C&F boxes in the pocket, so hopefully listeners will have an idea of what I mean by that. There's 2 front pockets in front of those that I can put my tippet, my floatant, and bits and pieces like that in, anything else you want to.
I like these little things here.
Yes.
So that's obviously for your retractors and all that. There's these little
yep. So I've got
tabs that they put on and holes.
Yep, and bits and pieces like that. And then I've got somewhere I can stick on my tippet.
Yeah.
The pockets I like because they're down flaps, if that makes sense. Sound like a pilot or something. But, they're not going to open so that I'm going to empty the fly boxes into the river or anything like that when I take them out. So I've got to lift the flap up to take the fly box out. So to me, that makes a lot of sense.
It's been made by an angler.
It doesn't feel like it's something that's rushed to market. That's how it feels to me.
Not generic.
It's DWR repellent, so that repels water. The really cool thing about this is it's 75 quid.
Yeah, which if you look at the market now and waistcoats, that actually is a lot of kit, there for £75. You could spend an awful lot more than that and not get so much functionality. Yeah, and it's set up to have the water bladder as well, so you can put that in, pass it through, and if you need to, if you're fishing somewhere hot and stuff brilliant. Like that. I've not used that one yet, and That's partly because you'll see why in just a moment, actually, with some of the other stuff I've bought today. But that's a great bit of kit. For that amount of money, it's doing an awful lot of things. Yeah. And the other thing that I love about Patagonia, of course, I've become a bit of a Patagucci lover, if you like. It's going to be as eco-friendly as possible. Yeah. They will produce that to be, as responsible as they can for the environment. Yeah. That's a nice message, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And
what's that called again, Pete?
It's called the Hybrid Pack Vest.
Hybrid Pack Vest.
So I bought this. When did I buy it? Because I saw it and I thought, actually, that might be exactly what I'm after. And I bought it. It must have been July, August time. So I fished with it for a little bit. I've got a magnet on the back for my net as well and stuff like that. So I don't need to stuff that down the back of my waders. And so it's just really... And it sits high as well. So if you're wading, it sits pretty high on you. So... there's nothing really to get in the way.
And it's got that nice kind of one-size-fits-all thing, I think, as well, isn't it?
You can adjust on the
all the
sides,
straps and what have you as well, and just sits there. And I know that the way that kind of pack is made, I'd call that more a pack than a waistcoat, right? Yeah. And they have been made in a way that they sit really nicely on your shoulders. They distribute the weight in a way that you don't feel them too much. Yeah. Cool bit of kit.
Yeah, no, I've been really, really pleased with that, and I think that's been one of my purchases that I've been really, really happy with, that has done the job exactly as I want it to do. And it's not sort of stuff clanking around. I can pick it up and it's not clanking around all over the place. I'm really, really pleased with it. So I think it's a good bit of kit, and I'm really pleased with that.
Shall I dive in with my next one then?
Yeah, I think great minds and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can see it.
So... This is, and for the benefit of this as well, we didn't honestly chat at all about. It was like we just thought it'd be quite fun to come along with a few bits of stuff that made a difference to our fishing this year, and I've picked this.
Yeah, and the other thing I do want to say in that, we're not paid or anything to say that. These are just kit that we use and like, and as I said, it must be a thing of minds thinking alike and looking at gaps in our tackle armoury or whatever it is, and seeing how they can best be served. And it's interesting that we're finding stuff along a similar sort of vein there, that we're singing from the
other brands are available.
Yes, exactly.
It isn't. I mean, to be brutally honest, within the industry, there's not the amounts of money I think around. We're certainly not being told, here, please go and talk about this, and
there's none of that.
There'll be a nice bundle of cash in a little envelope for us.
It'd be nice though. I wouldn't complain.
It would be great. So no, this is purely stuff that we've been using this year, and I thought it might be a little bit of interest for listeners. Because I guess we both come from that world of being around fishing kit, rivers, people, everything the whole time. And there's always that, how could I...
Solutions.
Yeah. How could I have, what solutions are there, and how am I going to enjoy my day more? So actually, very interesting listening to you talk about how when you started out guiding and stuff, you often, lanyard, all of that. And I must admit, I always used to think, how did he manage to do that sort of as mobile? Because me, I used to be, my pal Henry always used to laugh because I'd turn up for whether it was doing a magazine feature or we were heading off, fishing in Ireland or whatever it might be, something abroad. I would literally come with everything but the kitchen sink. I had to have a spare reel in case that reel went wrong, and then a spare because the spare might go wrong, and so on. Before I knew it, I'd had lots of stuff. And I guess perhaps because I'm not guiding full time, and also because I started to feel like I love that fish pond wild horse pack. I think it's a great thing. Love it for going up into the moors and all that. And often I was carrying people's drinks and sandwiches and all of it. Amazing bit of kit for that. But because I don't do so much of that, and I get a little bit of time to go fishing myself more than I used to, I was looking for ways of being more mobile. And this thing appeared on the market. It's about as simple a bit of kit as you could possibly get, but it's one of those things that the best ideas are the simple ones. Effectively, what Patagonia have done is come up with this thing called the wader station. And to me, it's a glorified inside wader pocket, which has a couple of straps that you use to attach to your upper parts of your waders. So the straps that you throw over your shoulders, the braces there, it clips around that and it sits smack bang right here in front of you. It consists of 4 pockets overall. You've got a big main one, and then inside that are 2 little sort of areas that you can push bits and pieces as well. But really, it's just one main big pocket.
And that again will probably hold a big C&F. Would it hold
Absolutely.
2? How much have you got in there?
Well, I've not really stacked it up today because I've got my other hidden bits of tackle I want to show you in there. So I won't open it right up. However, interestingly, what this was a mindset for me. It was, Nick, you carry far too much. How many times have you needed that 8th box of flies, etc.? So what I did is I cut down my size of my box, although I reckon a medium-sized C&F style as a good benchmark box would go in there and it would pretty much swallow it. So you could get that in there. You'd probably get a little snack in there and so forth. There's no real sort of place on it, I'm afraid, for the water side of things. But the reason that I really went for this was that I was thinking about those short little trips, where you wanted to, you had a couple of hours to spare. You wanted to bomb down with your mate or on your own to get a little bit of peace and quiet on the river. And I knew that if I picked that up, it would have a box of flies in it. And here I've got a couple of spool retainers so I can take a little bit of tippet. It's got this little guy here for sticking my flies on that are drying out.
I have to say, actually, I've got to mention with mine. Mine has the fly patch on as well.
Yeah, the little foam.
But it's one of those fly patches that actually holds...
You can remove it as well.
Yeah, and it actually holds the flies. The flies don't come out, do
Definitely.
Which is really good.
So that's on there. And then even just in the back there, there's a little... I guess you could chuck a valuable in there if you really wanted to, probably a set of keys or something. They call this, it's in a ripstop fabric. It's kind of polyurethane covered and like sort of cordura here on the front for the 2 little pockets with zips. And you've got all your normal tabs for sticking things like, retractors and a set of forceps and gink bottles and all of that kind of stuff. So this really is a great little station. But I have to say, if I was carrying anything valuable, I'd have that on the inside of my waders, probably in something like one of the overboard things or something along those ilks. Or even better, leave your mobile at home and kind of go just fishing. Yeah. Keep your keys in the inside wader pocket. But yeah, it's water resistant.
It's the same fabric as well, isn't it?
It is exactly the same, that ripstop stuff. And I believe, I must admit, I'm not sure with this whether they do put DWR on it, which is just for those that don't know, durable water repellents. I'm not sure if they do that, but I know for a fact it is water resistant, and it almost feels like it as well. You can feel like the water would bounce off it, and it's that really, it feels like a tough fabric. It's ripstop, so the idea is, if you're crashing through brambles and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to get wrecked. It's had reasonably hard use, and I must admit that even though I have been trying to travel light, I've overpacked it now and again, and zips are all in place and it's good. And of course, a little bit of coolness, it's got the old Fitzroy trout on there, featuring the Fitzroy Mountains from Argentina as well, so Argentina-Chilean borders. So that's second bit
really
of kit.
nice. And that's a couple of things I see about that is that I could use that for salmon fishing, actually, because I had one issue. With my waders, I was putting for salmon so many boxes, and it was stretching the elastic on the waders because everything was so heavy. Yeah. So I had a lot of stuff in there, whereas that could make a difference in the way that it's attached. But I see that has applications from the fishing that I sort of do. How much is it?
It's actually, Patagonia is Patagonia. It's a high-end brand. So I believe these are about $39.99. I think they're around about 40 quid. But for me, it's well worth it because it does a job. And I've not done it so much yet, but I see it being a great thing. I might get a second one to just chuck a few, I do my lure fishing for bass and that as well. Chuck a few soft plastics and bits and pieces on. I really like I did this a lot with my guiding, and now for my own personal fishing, I really like being able to grab and go. And if I know that, right, if I pick that up, it's got all my stuff for going, river fishing, or that would be great. So yeah, awesome little. It's so simple. I mean, it's not. It's not an overall new invention, but it's not something that really I think it perhaps seems so simple nobody else has done it.
Yeah.
So yeah, thumbs up to Patagonia.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, and it's again, this is a complete we didn't know what we were going to bring sort of thing, but it's kind of interesting. There's a theme developing. Although with my next piece, I don't know that it would be exactly the same. This is a jacket from a relatively new company called Dryology, and from Steve Simons down in Cornwall. And I sort of know a little bit of the background of this, but I think it's a really interesting piece of kit. It's a rain jacket or wading jacket, and it's been so well thought out. And it's one of these things, it seems to me, that it hasn't been rushed to market. They haven't tried. He's thought this through and thought, right, okay, how do I design this as a salmon angler primarily? Yeah. But I use it as a absolutely everything. But it's a waterproof, breathable jacket. The first thing I noticed when I first felt it, the feel of it. So it's completely different to normal rain jackets in the sense that they feel a little bit crispier, if that's the right sort of word. This is just really soft and light, isn't it?
Really
incredibly
soft.
Light.
Yep.
I like things like you can pack the hood away. So there's a zip on the back, so you can wear this at any time. And I've only been wearing this back end of the season, and I was out steelheading in October, and I thought, this is where I'm going to really give this a going over. Yeah. And we nearly got sunstroke. The weather was so good that I didn't get a chance to. But with grayling season, once these rivers drop down, this will be worn a fair bit. But I like that you can put the hood away.
Yeah.
So you can wear it if you don't.
I'm trying to think of a wading jacket that has that, and I can't think of one.
Yeah.
Straight away. That's nice.
The pockets as well. So good pockets. Also, he's even thought of putting something to retain. You could retain anything. I think the initial idea was that you could put your car keys on there.
Yes.
So nice and safe. The really interesting thing is that you can open these pockets up as well. So if you take the Velcro, the top, so they can open completely up, so you can get everything in there.
Yeah.
And the other pocket is designed so that
good strong looking Velcro as well.
So you can get your wallet, your head's in there.
So basically, what you've got there is a pull out
Yep.
thing. I'm not sure what's that made of. It's like a really soft,
it's almost
nice
like
material.
Yeah.
Some kind of
sort of almost neoprene-y, but
yeah,
it's not.
It
is it really super thin neoprene?
And that's got a couple more pockets. So you're actually, instead of everything falling to the bottom of your pocket,
it's held in place.
It's held in place.
I think the original
like a
idea,
filing system.
Yeah, the original idea for these was that it would hold your shooting heads and things like that.
Yeah, good.
But you could put your floating and your sinking. I think the idea of the design was that you had nothing hanging outside. So nothing
more,
forget
more
the
based
line.
around salmon fishing, do we think?
To a degree, but there's no reason why. I'm going to wear this for trout and
all sorts. But that makes sense to me that you could have your shooting heads in there, already like literally in your little filing system in the pocket there. And then the other great thing about it is they've got rid of all those appendages, which we know with salmon fishing is a killer, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want anything dangling just when you've hooked those very elusive fish.
Yeah. But equally, you could put your floating in there. You could put other bits and pieces. Obviously, your fly boxes are going to fit in there behind that as well. So there's a lot of room to put those, plus room to put those things that are easy to get hold of as well.
And does it come in other coloured?
There is a greeny coloured one as well. This is sort of a grey colour,
which is quite nice because like so many jackets that come out are you can have any colour as long as it's green sort of thing. And this is I could see people wearing that down to the pub, out and about. It looks like it's quite a It's quite a modern looking jacket.
It's really well thought out, and I think it's great. It's a new, and it's hard bringing a new product to a difficult marketplace generally in retailing anyway. But I think the selling point for it is that it is well thought out and designed really well for fly anglers.
Is it their own? Sorry, Pete. Is it their own fabric or what?
I think it may well be.
Okay.
I would have to check. I don't know.
But it's not just a Gore-Tex. They've actually this is a breathable material that they've used.
Highly breathable.
Yeah.
And I've sort of worn it, as I said, a fair bit, and I think it's really, really good.
It's got nice taping on the inside. The minute you look at the tapes, they look like they're really good quality and stuff.
I think he's really thought this through.
Yeah.
And thought, right, I'm going to think and address everything that frustrates or, doesn't work for me currently. And even if you look at, this has got hand warmer pockets as well.
Yeah.
Now, one of the problems with hand warmer pockets is that when your hands are wet, that's great putting them in for the first time.
Yeah.
When it's the 10th time, and as a fishing guide, early season, it is bloody cold.
Definitely.
And the really cool thing about this is that you can actually take or pull out that pocket so that when you're fishing or when it's not quite as cold, that can dry off a bit as well.
Good idea.
Rather than it staying
Inside
inside and cold and wet still.
Yeah, pull it out.
It's got time to be exposed, and I guess you could probably shake it as well, and it has time to dry. So things like that say to me, this has been really well thought out.
Yeah.
It looks cool. It doesn't look traditional, but it doesn't look ultra modern.
No.
It's just right, and I've been really, really pleased with it so
pack
far.
away, how easy is
Yeah,
that
that pack's
pack away?
really small.
Yeah.
Because of the material, I think,
Yeah.
it's much easier to fit in, and I've had it in that Patagonia pack as well, that I've carried it in the back of that, and it actually rolls down really, really small as well, yet competes with bigger, thicker jackets out there. So,
and it looks like they thought about the cuffs and stuff as well,
all that sort of stuff.
because all of that kind of thing, like there's nothing worse than cuffs that leak badly, and it looks like the hood. These things more and more, they've got to be designed by anglers for anglers, haven't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, bold step as well, because that's a difficult market to crack.
Yeah, and I think it's a good product, and I hope people hear a little bit more about it, to be honest. I really like it, and I like what they've done and addressed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting where I've talked about both of the packs there as well, that we're thinking about them from a fishing point of view and their applications and whether they're up to. And I think from where we come with this sort of thing, that I guess because we're wearing it a lot of the time, and I know there's lots of people out there doing similar sort of stuff, that you're looking for those little things all the time, and you're aware of a product, and sometimes it's shortcomings, but also when they've got something right as well. And I think this has been, I'm just looking now actually where I put it down, your inside pockets there as well, and bits and pieces like that. So I'm really, really pleased with how it's performed so far. It's going to get a really good working over.
And it's been a West Country boy as well.
Yes, Cornwall.
Come up with it.
Yeah, Cornwall border.
Yeah,
so,
nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, so I'm sort of, we'll be passionate about that because of what it is. But I think that's some nice gear, and that's the Dryology low-tick jacket. So
good to see as well, because I've sort of heard here and there. I think I've seen the odd picture of you out with them on, but I didn't know anything about it. I've not looked at one in the flesh. So yeah, good. A surprise for me to that's a nice thing about this. Learnt something there.
Cool.
Shall look out for it.
What have you got next?
You touched on this earlier on.
Don't say you got a Dryology jacket.
No, I haven't got a Dryology jacket. I wanted to think this year, when you asked me about this, what stuff's been kind of making a difference. Now this all came about because this little thing here, I'm not going to talk about the nipper, because we've already talked about the expensive rods and reels, and when somebody learns that an able nipper like this, which is designed just to clip our line, is about 150 quid, I can totally see why a lot of people go, that is ridiculous. Why on earth would you pay that? I have to say, again, I think, I see you've got the beautiful brown trout version. I went for the blue one, but I don't think it'll be that long before I'm adding something. I know Tom, who works with me, the retail manager there, he's got a really cool one with skull and crossbones and all of that. But it's not the Able nipper at the enormous price of 150 quid that I've talked about, or going to talk about. It's the fact that it's on a lanyard. And you mentioned earlier on about lanyards, and I've come to them quite late in life. And my first real experience of using something that's hung around my neck to clip line was when I headed out earlier in the year to Mexico. And I took this thing with me, and I was just suddenly like, I'm not looking for it on my waistcoat or anything like that. It's hung there round my neck, and I can clip line really quickly. And so, the Able one that I've got here, again, is a pricey thing, but it's just a bit of rope. So I'm going to be changing to this thing. Now, actually, this one, Tom's quite a talented chap, and he's been messing around with fly line, and he's braided me up this lanyard. But there's a great company, and I know that you'll, I think, love the state that I'm going to talk about. They're in Missoula, I think it is, Montana.
One of my favourite
I hope
places.
I've got that right. But they're called fly vines. Oh, look at that! I honestly didn't know you had them. Now I've got my sight line provisions bracelet thing on there, which I got after I had my Grand Slam earlier in the year. But I will be adding. So just let me rewind here a minute. So Fly Vines are a company in Montana that basically are taking fly lines, old fly lines that have been used and so forth. They're working with some companies that are giving them offcuts and so forth. But what they're actively asking, and we're one company that are doing it, is to send fly lines to them, which they then make into a range of products, including lanyards like this one. They also make the very fine bracelets that you've got there. Things like your croaky type things, sunglasses, retainers. And you can get, they have like the more muted colours, such as the lanyard that I'm showing you here, which is done in some nice, it looks to me like that's a Rio in touch. You can see the grey and the olives and everything there that's been used. Right through to the real, what they call the bright colours type things, where you get the real funky sort of oranges and yellows and so on. And very simply, what they're doing is braiding these things up, plaiting them if you like, and turning them into functional fishing tools and things that you can wear. And the way they're doing this as well, because I can see that being really time consuming, it's a great story, and it kind of reminds me of the good old days of Turrell when they were producing all those flies, in the UK. Is that it's basically piecework. So as far as I understand it, they will send this out to ladies in the area and get them to make them for them.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think that's a great. We're reusing a product that has been used, or it's an offcut that. I'm not sure what they would have done with them in the past, but I guess they got thrown away or incinerated or something. And it's now, being recycled, or should we say in today's terminology, upcycled.
Yeah. I funnily enough, I've got the wrist bracelets, and I bought mine when I was out in Bozeman. Yeah. And I went into a store and saw them, and then I bumped into our good friend Simon Gorsworth in Sportfish in
and he had
Reading.
About 20 up his
He
arm,
had them on, but they weren't available in the UK at the time. I bought these, I don't know, four and a half years ago, something like that. They're still going strong.
You've had those for how long?
Four and a half years. Yeah.
See, I've always been slow on the uptake. That's I had no idea.
But he knew the lady. Obviously, him being at Rio, knew the lady who was behind the company. Yeah. And he took a photo of them to show her that somebody in the UK was wearing her product. And it was really exciting to see Guide Fly Fishing take them on last year.
Yep.
Year before.
Yep.
They also do coffee coasters.
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I haven't got
really
any
cool.
yet. I want them.
Yeah, so they look really great, don't they? And they're really...
Yeah, I just think it's a nice story to take something. You know, I know we all go on so much now, and so we should be, about, you know, recycling and eco-friendly and so forth. But, you know, that's something that, I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know if they would do it, but I'm guessing you could send them an old fly line and they'd make it into something for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Between the Patagonia wader station and that lanyard, that has made my fishing this year a heck of a lot more mobile.
It's interesting you should say that. I was thinking about that. We were out in Oregon fishing with a super cool guy called John Hazlitt, and Jimmy spotted it very quickly that he had just a pair of crimps or forceps that had scissors on them.
Ah, right.
And I think he had them on a lanyard. I can't remember if he just attached them as well. And he said, that's all I need.
Yes,
so
that makes sense. So you can pull the hooks out.
I can tip it, and it makes life really, really easy. And I know Jim bought some forceps. I can't remember if he lost them or they fell. I can't remember now. But they were really, really... It's a really interesting idea, again, adding to the travelling light.
Definitely.
That you don't need so much stuff, and I think that's a really interesting idea, and one I might explore with my salmon fishing particularly, that you're not changing flies as often, so you just need something, if you're lucky enough to hook a fish, to help unhook it should it need it, and to cut your tippet if you need to cut the tippet.
Defo, and I know, I'm sure you've spoken to people that you've been guiding. So often I'd have this kind of conversation with people where they'd say, well, you know, how do you manage to catch X amount of fish? Or, you know, you've taken me to here and you've said, try this, that and the other, and I've caught some fish. And what would you say is the essence and important? There's many things, but I'd honestly say that, you know, anglers that do really well on the water are the efficient ones. And I know it's a cliche and we've heard it a million times, you're not going to catch anything without your fly in the water. But any tool or thing that you've got to, you sort of use the words just now about, you know, making life easier and so forth. And if you've got a tool that'll do two things, then it just means you spend more time fishing and thinking about that. You know, clipping line, taking hooks out, all of that stuff should be quick, easy, and then you focus far more on the enjoyment side, really.
No, you're exactly right, right. And simple is best. It is always the best.
And for me, this year, going mobile, it was. Fly fishing is very mobile, but like I said, I have been very guilty of overloading myself.
Yeah. You talk about the Fish Pond Wild Horse Pack, which is fantastic and has a great big pack on the back. A friend of mine, I think you know him, Chris Kent.
Yes.
Used to use one, I don't know if he still does, and this thing, I'm not kidding, it had so much stuff in it, I couldn't lift it. I could have got in the back. He could have carried me around and he wouldn't have noticed.
Sounds like mine.
Yeah, I don't know how he carried that thing around, but if you're listening, Chris, I'd love to know. But this thing was absolutely
He is quite a big guy.
He's a big lad,
a big, powerful man. I can see how he would carry that around. Yeah. But I have got a great picture now of you sat in the back of his Wild Horse Pack.
Yeah. I'm sure we can sort that out. So, really interesting stuff.
Okay.
So, really, really like that. Now,
have you got anything left?
Oh, I've got two more things. How about you?
Yeah, I've got one more thing.
Right. Okay. Well, that works perfectly. So if I do my one next, in my very humble opinion, if there were a nuclear war, and I sincerely hope there isn't one, there are two things that would survive. One of them are cockroaches. The other one are Vision Icon waders.
Ah.
Now, the Vision Icon waders have been upgraded and they've been replaced by a range called the Koski.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought these along because I've just seen Tom came back from IFTD thing.
Yeah.
And was,
These are really
brilliant.
good. I bought these ones. I happened to I was after some and they didn't have them in, but they had some of these new ones and I bought these ones. It's the zip version. Retains all the great features of the Icons, equally as durable. In fact, I've liked them so much I bought another pair for salmon fishing. And what I found is that I can make waders last a little bit longer. And I know if I've got salmon fishing kit or if I've got trout fishing kit, and I spend a lot of time in the water. So I thought, right, I will get myself 2 pairs. This pair for my trout fishing, zip. So coffee, cold water, and an elderly bladder means that the zip makes life so much easier for me. So I like that. Equally as durable, the features are very, very similar. I think what they've done with this, though, they've improved the fabric. It's called F4 fabric, which I believe the icons were F3. So they're slightly more breathable. I don't understand about that sort of stuff. But exactly, feel and look relatively similar. They're finished off in blue against the grey. With some of the piping and bits and pieces like that. There is somewhere on the outside where you can hang tools, and given the conversation we've just had about having a simple nipper forceps combo, that will work really, really well.
Interesting, aren't they? You've got those little tabs on the front so you can push things down through and hang little bits if you need to as well.
So the zip is really, really good news. On my salmon ones, which are just the normal pull-up version, so they don't have the zip on them, they have something that comes over from some of their other ranges, is the internal pocket, which is clear, which is really cleverly velcroed on to the inside. So you can use it like it's pretty much, I'm pretty sure it is a waterproof pocket. Great. So you can put your phone in it, but you can also pull that off as well if you want to. So it's really securely velcroed on, but you can pull that off as well. I'm expecting, and again, they've had a fair bit of use, I'm expecting good durability out of them, similar to the icons as well. And they haven't let me down so far. The other pair I took to Oregon, fished hard in, scrabbled down stuff. The Deschutes is rocky and everything else. They are still in great shape. So I'm hoping that they carry on the mantle from the icon. I can't remember, I bought them a little while ago now, so I can't remember what RRP is. I would suspect they're going to be similar to what the icons is.
I think they are that 250, 300 around there.
Yeah.
So, for what is a breathable, really durable wader, they're not a king's ransom at all. No,
and so we've gone from the very upper end to middle to, and these are, I know so many people say good things about Vision Icon waders, and I can't disagree with those. We use those with the fishing school for people as well.
I did guiding.
They last a lot. And they're really, really good waders, and I think these will continue in a similar sort of vein. Vision are just such a funky, interesting company in that how they develop things and how they look at things. And it's, I know we talked a little bit about it in the podcast I did with Jim Williams, and these are a staple, I think, for any serious fly angler now. I think if you're looking at waders, that's probably one of the first places that you need to stop.
Definitely, I think if you're looking, if you're still stuck in the old rubber waders and that kind of stuff, and you're looking for a set of good breathable stocking foots, but you don't want to go right into the really high end Gore-Texes and stuff, then actually Vision are they're kind of a great sort of benchmark for that sort of more value item. But also as a company, I think they're cool because they're not afraid to put themselves out there, do things a bit differently. They
did denim waders, didn't they? And Jimmy, we had the
not made from denim, by the way.
They're not very
denim look. Although that would be brilliant.
And they had the skater boots as well, didn't they? Like Converse as well. And they'll have a go. There is clearly some demand out there. I don't know that it's necessarily the UK, but there is clearly an interest in those sorts of things. But they're not afraid to experiment with things, and I think that's good for fishing as well.
Definitely, there's so much talk, isn't there? I think across the world, but particularly in the UK, about what markets are out there, how can we get some younger people involved and so forth, and spread the word, as it were. And there is a lot to be said that younger folk, perhaps even some of the older folk now as well, they are bothered about the sort of if you like, to bring it under give it a name, the sort of the fashionable side of things. They're in their Instagram posts and Facebook posts and so forth, and they're more likely to be attracted, I think, to something that looks kind of funky and is also functional than perhaps, you know, the age-old stuff that we've had, the traditional stuff in the past. So, yeah, bringing a bit of that ethos, that newer thinking in is good. And vision of, they're right up the front there, I think, with that kind of stuff.
It's interesting you say that, and I know we'd had breakfast and a lot of coffee beforehand as well, and talked and how passionate you are and myself about new people coming into fishing, and those things are really interesting, aren't they, to people who are coming into it. So actually this is cooler than, and I always bang on about the J.R. Hartley thing, and I still don't think that did fly fishing as a whole a great deal of good, because everyone was pictured as a genteel old gentleman of a certain age.
Well, whereas, I think you said in a podcast before, you know, I've got to know those lads pretty well, obviously in London, now that I spend a reasonable amount of my time there. And the whole Wandle thing has been cool to see. And it's like, one young guy's been doing it, and then another young guy, and then there's been girls getting involved, and before you know it, you know, now it'd be really interesting. You know, I think if you walked around an average small still water, and looked at the age demographic compared to if you, in the height of the season, walked down the Wandle, I bet you'd find a lot of, you know, sort of 20 to, let's say, mid 30-year-olds out there instead of on the still waters. A lot of it is going to be the 60 plussers, you know. So, but you know yourself, you see all those Insta posts of people with, you know, a nice fish on the Wandle, and I think we've definitely had people come in and said, "Oh, I saw Tom with such and such," and you know, a fish, and young guys. I'm talking some of them, you know, well below 20 that have seen this stuff, because obviously they're on their phones and that, and it's plugging into. It's like everything, isn't it? It doesn't have to be fishing. You know, the reason that all this stuff's been going on with influencers in all sorts of worlds, and whether it's right or wrong and so on, is that you know, that is a very direct route straight into the eyes of people, and I think, the funkier it looks, the more likely they are to go, do you know what, I want to have a go at that.
No, that's a very good and salient point. What have you got for me next?
Right, this is not supposed to be a curveball, okay? It's not supposed to be a curveball. But, again, you kind of said, you know, bits of tackle and stuff that are making a difference to you. In here, this is probably going to bore you to tears, but I've got my absolutely favourite headlamp.
Right.
Have you seen one of these before?
No.
Now, this came through me reading Henry Gilbey's blog. And actually, you know, I've used headlamps a lot in the past for sea trout fishing, but latterly I've got more and more involved with lure fishing for bass and getting more interested in how that, you know, all works. And although I've not done huge amounts of it yet, it's pretty obvious from a lot of the blogs and guides out there, like I think it's Mark Cowling and so on, huge amounts of bass getting caught at night. And I also like the idea of this. It's called the Night Core, and this particular one is the I think it's the NU25, and it's this. I mean, just feel that it's so light. It's basically a tiny little headlamp. Here's what I love about it: you don't need batteries. It's USB charged.
Oh, wow.
I have used it a fair bit because I keep it with me all the time now. So it's then if I've got back late from fishing or whatever, you know, and I'm sort of de-tackling and so forth, be this fly fishing for trout, or as I say, my real thing is that I want to get out there night fishing for bass. This thing takes up no room. I'll demonstrate it for you on your head. You don't even know.
Yep.
I'm sure it looks very fetching. You don't know it's there because it's so light, but a head torch at the end of the day is only so good as its beam. Have a little look at this. I'm going to now, I know that the folk at home listening can't see this.
Yeah, it's bright. Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's bright.
Now, the thing is, Pete, there's number one. Pretty good. There, that's about probably bright enough. 3, okay, is seriously bright.
Yes.
You know, you can see a long way. However, now I've never used it. This thing, if you read the instructions, it has turbo mode. Turbo mode, apparently you can use for a maximum of 30 minutes or else it'll burn out. That's brighter than that.
Yeah, wow.
So it is incredibly bright. But what I love about it, that's on the sort of the LED white light. Let's switch that one off. The second button, so there's two buttons. I love this too, because I don't know if you've ever had a head torch where you have to do about 50 cycles to get to where you want.
Yeah.
And then you press the wrong one, and the next thing you know, you're flashing like some weird alien at night and all of that. The great thing with this is so the left-hand side is the bright light. On the right-hand side, right next to it, if I press that one,
you've got red one.
I've got a red one.
Sea trout.
As well, and I have still got the flashy mode as well, so just in case, but yeah, so for sea trout fishing you've got that nice red light, so you're not chucking something really bright across the water scaring all your fish. It's got quite a funky sort of strap as well. The strap I found to be really, really good. And like I say, you can just whack that in your USB. So, if you're driving from spot to spot and you think, I better just keep the old charge in it, you can stick it in. A lot of cars these days have got a USB, so you can quickly give it a little charge. I have to say that I have never, ever, and I've had it on for good amounts of time, I've never, ever yet had it run out on me.
Wow.
So a really lightweight, brilliant bit of kit, and not just for fishing, you can use it for all sorts. But yeah, that these days is pretty much in my truck permanently. So as if I need a light, it's right there and it takes up no room.
And it's super light as well, isn't it?
Incredibly
I suppose because
light.
there's no batteries.
It rolls up. There's no batteries. It rolls up like that. And the other thing, I believe that they are distributed. I think it's from North Petherton, so they're around Taunton.
Nice.
So it's quite nice. It's another West Country kind of company. So that's the little Nightcore head torch.
And how much are they?
Now, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I didn't, because I bought this a little while ago. Not expensive. Certainly no more than 60 quid, and I think it was between maybe 35 and 45. Not really, really expensive, and especially because I see that, certainly, like I said, I've used it a fair bit. I see it as being a bit of kit that you're going to have for a long time, and a really useful bit of kit.
And the thing about that as well is how light it is, but small. It's probably about the size of a matchbox. Not even a matchbox.
I think
not
less.
even a matchbox.
Yeah, it's. I've suddenly got this weird vision. Maybe it's because I need chocolate. It's almost like a couple of sections of Dairy Milk chocolate size for not the large bar. It's what size is it? I know I'm looking at it. It's smaller than a matchbox.
Yeah,
no doubt about that.
And also, if it's on your cap, if you're sea trout fishing or bass fishing at night, it's not going to be heavy, so you're not going to feel it on there.
You don't even know it's there.
Yeah,
you just don't know it's there. It's a really lightweight, functional bit of kit, that Nightcore. I would definitely recommend it to anybody that thinks that they may need some light out there on the water.
No, it's super powerful from such a small bulb as well. It's extraordinary.
And the thing is I know that we're sat here doing a pod, and people, it'd be an interesting one for people, I think, where we're having a chat about kit but they can't actually see it.
Yeah. The
benefit, of course, is you can dive on the web and have a look at all this stuff.
Well,
they've got a nice little website for
absolutely. And what I'm going to try, I can't guarantee it, I'm going to try and put pictures of the stuff on the podcast page as well. I'm going to try, or links or whatever. So I might ask you afterwards for some links and bits and pieces, then we can put those on and see if, I don't know if I can put pictures, but I might be able to put links on at the end if anyone's interested. So we're down to the last one, and I'm going back to a rod, and I'm coming down the price scale a little bit. And what I was looking for, where I'm fishing a lot of the time now, that what I'm looking for is a longer rod. I'm looking for something that I can mend and control line really well with. So I'm looking for a 10-foot rod rather than a 9-footer, because the size of the river there. Yep. So that gives me a little bit better line control. I wanted a 4-weight rod, and the reason I wanted a 4-weight rod was that since actually, I guess a lot of it with Paul, but this year generally, I've spent a lot more time targeting fish on a dry fly.
Yeah.
But there are situations where there's not much going on, and it may be that I want to chuck some metal. So rather than having a 10-foot 3-weight, I thought a 4-weight gives me a little bit more flexibility. That greater mass of a 4-weight over a 3-weight allows me to throw something a little bit heavier should I want to. So that's why I ended up at that. Now, we had on a podcast Paul Proctor, and we talked for quite some time. There's probably very few people who know trout fishing as well as he does. And we touched on his involvement with Mackenzie rods. And anything he's involved with the development of, as probably one of the best trout fishermen, certainly in our country, I'm interested in.
Defo.
So I went for the Mackenzie NX1 10-foot 4-weight rod.
This is one I've been thinking about myself. It was really interesting listening to his podcast, and it was great that you're talking to all these different people. And in Paul Procky's one, I was really interested in that 10-foot is his rod. Yeah. And it made a lot of sense, the stuff he said about it having the backbone and so forth. And this first feel of that, we don't have the 10-foot 4 in the shop. It feels nice. Yeah. Feels really nice.
And again, one of the interesting things in the development of that, he wanted a rod, and I've wound it up, and I can see that's probably got reservoir applications, perhaps from a boat or dries.
Took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. I'm wiggling this around. As you know, this year Wimbledon has gone through the roof as a venue, and it's only a few minutes from my house, and I'm wiggling this and honestly thinking to myself, how amazing would that be to go and fish little nymphs and dries on a summer's evening. It would be amazing, because the fish up there are scrappers anyway. Put them on a 4-weight, you'd get really nice delicate presentation. But I'd have, well, as we've seen as Paul's fish on his Instagram pages and so forth show, you'd have no problem landing a decent trout with this, would you? No.
What he's concentrated on, so it's not a stiff rod, mid-action rod. What he's thought about in this is the ability to deliver the line, obviously, but there's some backbone in there if you want to throw it. I sort of wound it up just to see what it would do, and I think when we've done this, we're going to have a chuck of it, and you see what you think as well.
Cool.
But I've been super impressed with that, but also, and we've talked a little bit about on some of these podcasts, that I'm looking at rods now as how they would play a fish.
Yep.
And so it will protect that lighter tippet. And, after we did that podcast with Paul, I took him down to the river, and I think we even mentioned that we'd seen a fish that might be of interest to him, and he had one for West Country standards, he weighed it, he said it was £2.12, so just under £3. And I watched how that rod played the fish. Yeah. And I thought, I'm in. And
so you didn't have one of these before?
No, I tried then, and I was super impressed with it, and I thought it was a really interesting idea. Yeah. And playing the fish, casting it, I had a go of some while I was there, and I thought it was a really, really interesting rod. And nicely put together.
Yeah, nice cork.
We're coming down the scale here, so I think they retail around, I think it was 400.
Okay.
So they're 400. I say I think, and that's purely because 9-foot rods are slightly cheaper, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they are around that. I know some of those. We've got some of the 10.7s and that's exactly the price bracket they're around.
Yeah, I think it's
that kind of
middle. It's $3.99, isn't it?
Middle ground. But it feels anything but a middle ground rod. Yeah. I mean, obviously, with Paul's input, the reason I'm liking this straight away, everything you've said about playing fish, you can feel it's got some backbone in the butt there. But what I really like is there's no doubt I can be heavy-handed sometimes with my strike. Get a bit overexcited. You're not going to pop, I think, a light leader. It's going to absorb a lot of that because you can feel in the tip. Something, again, people can't actually watch what we're up to here. When people come in and talk to me about rods, so often you give it to the customer and the first thing they do is they flex the wrist backwards and forwards like this. Oh, sorry, I'm going to break your rod on the chandelier. They flex the rod backwards and forwards like this, and you can't find anything out about a rod if your wrist is breaking like this. So what I'm doing here is I just pop my top finger on the top of the cork, make sure it's dead in line with my arm. And then the minute I do that now, when I just gently flex the tip like that, it's like it's got a hell of a lot of life, isn't it? you know?
Yeah.
And you can feel that you could control a loop when you're casting really nicely with that. No problem whatsoever. And yet, you know, you could be a little heavy-handed on the strike. And like you said, you know, the thing is I'm guessing a lot of the time Paul's probably fishing quite light leaders, although it was interesting on the podcast that, you know, you guys, it was something for me to experiment with, was saying, well, not always. Sometimes they'll take even on quite strong leader. But from a confidence point of view, I'd want to be on fairly low diameter leader, yeah?
And I think, you know, you're exactly right. Those things will come into play. I think sometimes, and confidence is, to me, one of the most important things. If you're fishing confidently, you fish well. If you're sitting there thinking, not really, and you can make those changes to bring your confidence. So it might be a fly change. It may be tippet strength, diameter. It may be leader length. Things like that can definitely make a difference. I always also think back to that fish sitting there. If you look down, and certainly on our streams, I wonder how much those minutiae, tiny little things make a difference, because that window for the fish to see is pretty small and short, and they have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Yes, there are times, you know, and chalk streams may well be an exception to that as well, that they get more time to inspect, but they don't get that long to look at it. But if you make that change, if it's decreasing the leader, those things can at times make a difference as well. So they're worth bearing in mind. And if it makes you fish psychologically better,
Yes.
then that's good, isn't it?
Something that came out of Paul's podcast, you know, and obviously he's had a massive hand in bringing this rod to the market, right? I was really interested how he was talking about not necessarily setting the fly up right above the fish, but actually setting it slightly off. Once he's marked his fish and it's right, I'm going there, he'd set it slightly off, and he was sort of saying that he wanted to make the fish kind of go to it a little bit, put in a little tiny bit of effort, because from what I understood, it sounded like he felt that made for a more confident take, but also he could get a better hook up and so forth. You know, so that sort of tactic, obviously he's really confident in, and it's something I try more, but you've got to put that there with a rod, leader, the whole setup's got to be right, because, you know, at the end of the day, if the rod doesn't feel right in your hand, if it doesn't perform how you want it to, then it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, they are tools, and I know it's a cliche, we've said it so many, but they are an extension of your arm. You know, at the end of the day, it's a way of putting that line in the right position, that leader, that the end goal is to put the fly in the right place, isn't it? And then, you know, obviously make sure that you hook up without breaking the leader and so forth. I think that's a really interesting rod, 10 foot for 4, and I can see it having lots of applications.
Yeah, and like you say, actually, with the wiggle thing there, you know, you can see how quickly it recovers, i.e. going from under load to straight again is quick. And that's the thing I look for, you know, most...
It's not bouncing around, is it?
No bounce.
At
and for
all.
a 10-foot rod as well, it's not...
doesn't shake when you do that. I like to give them a little twitch in the rod tip and feel you know... what's going on, and it's not kind of reverberating down or anything. All it's doing is talking to my arm and saying, God, I really want a line and a leader up this, and chuck at a fish.
Let's go and chuck it. We've got the rivers are still high here at the moment, so we can't sadly fish at the moment. But I think we can go out and have a cast. We're at the Fox and Hounds Hotel. That's why Nick mentioned chandelier. I don't have a chandelier in my house.
We're in the marital suite.
And I think we're going to have a cast of that in a minute and see what you think as well. And we'll string up the light line, and we'll string up the dart, and we'll have a little bit of a play with those.
Bit of a cast off.
Yeah, and play with those a little bit. But I like the finish on that as well. The colour, green colour with black whipping. It's just a nice rod.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And at a good price point as well. So, and I think they do a variety of lengths. I know I've cast the 8.5 foot for a 3, which is a sweetie, and it sounds as though, I know he's got some saltwater. I know he's gone off to Mexico, and he's got some saltwater rods and stuff like that. And you know, Scott again Paul's just a cracking guy, but Scott as well is one of the nicest people in
world class as well.
And of course, with the salmon rods, that's another chat in itself. But we're looking at it from. Just really, I guess we're more trout-centric on this chat today. But
well, I actually know somebody who does a lot of stillwater fishing reservoirs, and he went through a bunch of rods. I know he went and tested them all, different lines, etc., and he actually settled on a 10-foot-7, and I know he loves it. You know, so, and it's the NX1.
NX1, yeah.
Do we know anything about why it's NX? I always don't, because no?
Would it be Nano? It could well be Nano. I know it's not the.
I always think it's funny rod names. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the Dart to me. So I love that.
Yeah.
And the light line, but
yeah.
The Mackenzie NX1, definitely a rod I want to go and try.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll go and do that in a minute. It leaves me to say thank you for that, Nick. I hope people find this interesting. One of the things I want to really stress about this, it's not product placement. This is just two guys who love fishing, breathe fishing, and it's stuff they like using. And I hope you found value and interest in that. If you're listening, and thanks, Nick, for chatting. It was interesting, the stuff you brought along, well thought out and really interesting to see as well. So thank you very much for coming along today and chatting about this.
It's honestly, it's been a pleasure. It's fun, and like you said as well, this is just. I know you were keen to not always just do sort of the interview sort of stuff, which is it's been brilliant hearing about different people and learning their stories and so on. I know you've had Damon on, Luke on, Paul, Brett, Gerald, all these different people. It's been great, but. Let's be honest, actually, if you and I were together and not talking fishing tactics, the chances are we'd be talking rods, lines, what have you seen, do you like that, all of that sort of stuff. And it's not just about the fish, is it? It's not just about catching the fish. It's for me, using cool gear is a big part of it, and trying to find the right tools, and so it's been great fun. Thanks for having me along.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. And what we've tried to do is not go over a variety of price points, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
So it's something for everyone. I hope it is anyway. Let me know. So thanks, Nick, very much indeed. We'll go and cast these rods and go and see what Nick thinks about those as well. So that will be good fun. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a little different. We're going to do some other different things with the podcast, but obviously the main basis will be sitting down and talking to people about fly fishing. Fly Culture Podcast, as I always say, is an offshoot of our magazine, Fly Culture. It's a quarterly magazine. It's something we're really extremely proud of. We're independent. We're advertisement free. We give you 100% content, and it's written by fishermen who are deeply passionate about fishing, conservation, and being out in the water, be it alone or in the company of good friends. So if you haven't seen Fly Culture, we've not long had our website updated. We update that with lots of cool stuff on there, plus some old articles from the magazine, so you get a sense of what it's about. Fly Culture really isn't a how-to magazine, it's about why. And that's what we pride ourselves on. So we try and be a little bit different with that. Lots of good, great pictures, articles from people, mainly from the UK, but around the world, expressing why they love fly fishing so much. You can find us on the usual social media channels, on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. We're there as well. But I really hope that you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I have, just chatting with a mate about fishing tackle, and hopefully you do similar sort of things as well, and I've got a sense of what we enjoy and what we like talking about. So thank you very much indeed for listening. This is Pete Tyjas signing off on the Fly Culture podcast, and hopefully you'll catch us another time soon. Thanks very much for listening.